So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am very excited to finally speak with Michael Unbroken. Michael, welcome, man.
My man, I am super excited to be here with you, brother.
I appreciate that. So Michael says, I didn't sign up to be the spokesperson for survivors of child abuse. In fact, this job sucks. I mean that. He goes on to say, the truth is that the universe chose me for this role. I've been gifted the ability to navigate the most harsh and vicious child abuse to come out on the other side seemingly whole. I say seemingly because there will always be a part of me that was stolen. I cannot get that back. None of the rage, drugs, sex, rock and roll, or anger will give me that thing that was stolen. He says the world is both beautiful and brutal, and I've seen the best and the worst. I know that the abuse I suffered has given me an undeniable strength that I was only able to tap into after falling face first into complete darkness. Okay, wow. Before we go in here, Michael, share with our listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
Yeah, man. So born and raised in Indianapolis, and today I am in Denver, though I will say, generally speaking, I'm on whatever airplane or hotel bed I happen to be on.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, what happened?
What didn't happen, man? You know, it's wild. And I always like to preface before I get into this to just remind people, please don't compare your journey or your story to mine. Like, we all have different backgrounds. We all come from something different, and comparison is a dangerous game, because my life honestly sounds like a freaking movie, but like, this is real shit. And so I always try to tell people, like, you know, just keep in mind that we're on different paths. So when I was 4, my mother, who was a drug addict and alcoholic, actually cut off my right index finger. And she married my stepfather when I was 6, who was super abusive. You know, the kind of guy you pray is never your stepfather. He'd wake my brothers up in the middle of the night, beat the crap out of us, put us in the hospital. And, you know, I always think about this today. Now, obviously, being informed and understanding life at a very different scope. Hurt people. And they were continuing the cycle of trauma. And I think about their parents and their parents and their parents, and I'm like, this has gone on forever, man. And so we spend a lot of our childhood deeply impoverished and homeless. In fact, between 8 to 12 years old, I lived with 30 different families, getting bounced around place to place to place, strangers, family, church members, random hotel rooms, vans. You know, I never knew where we were going to be. And when I was 12, my grandmother adopted me. And look, man, in some sense, it's a godsend, right? But I'm biracial, black and white, and my grandma's old racist ass white lady from a town in Tennessee you've never heard of. And so imagine this. Here I am, this biracial child in a home with this woman whose son to this day is in the Aryan Brotherhood and has a copy of Hitler's autobiography, Mein Kampf, on her kitchen table. Huh. So as a coping mechanism, I turned to drugs. At 12 years old, I start getting high. I'm smoking weed. I'm popping pills. We're doing anything, right? Now I understand it's a coping mechanism. Then it was escape, right? Mm-hmm. Which, you know, same thing. When I was 13, I started getting drunk. And by 15, I got kicked out of school for selling drugs. And like, I'm breaking in houses. I'm running from the cops. I'm getting shot at. Like, dude, we are doing crazy shit. But like, this is brotherhood to me over here. This small group of guys, we're running the streets. We're doing all these drugs. We're doing all this illegal stuff. Part of it's survival, right? And the other part of it is community. And one day I get a call from the counselor at school, and she says, the dean wants to talk to you. And guy, I'm like, for what, man? You already kicked me out. Like, why am I going to come to school? And I go to school, and I'm sitting there, and the counselor is with this lady. I have no idea who she is. And they basically go, look, we're going to put you on a last chance program. You've been volunteered by one of the teachers anonymously here at the school. This is your only opportunity. You're either yes or you're gone for good. There's no other opportunity.
How old are you at this point?
I'm probably 15 and a half, about to turn 16 right now. And what's interesting, there's this incredible parallel that happened simultaneously. I also put a restraining order on my mother and my stepfather. And then I go into this summer school, or excuse me, into this last chance program. And guy, no joke, I've posted this on the internet. There is proof. I went from straight F's to straight A's. Captain of the wrestling team, on the football team, dating a cheerleader. Like everything is different. Stop doing drugs, right? And now I understand, like looking back, of course, I'm in this hyper aroused state. I'm in this hyper vigilant state, all this chaos. How could I ever study? How could I be studious? How could I do any of those things? And so a couple of years goes by, I'm doing well. I'm actually on the path to graduate high school, believe it or not. It's absolutely insane. And my grandmother falls into a coma. My brother and I, my next youngest brother and I, are living by ourselves in this house. We are doing whatever it takes to literally counting change out of the couch to go and buy food, right? 18 years old, 17 years old. And my grandma comes out of the coma, lets my mother move back into the house. My mom had actually been sober, which is, I'd never seen this.
Mhm.
Like, dude, we started going to AA with her when I was 7 years old. Like I would be in AA meetings, recovery meetings with my mother. And so we'd never seen her sober. And within 30 fucking days, man, she is back to drinking, popping pills, and crashing her car. And I understand exactly what happened today. At 18, I didn't. She was back in the place of her trauma, of her abuse, in that place where she was coping. And so what happened is one night she attacked me. And I remember the first time I'd ever hit my mother. I mean, she beat the shit out of me so many times. Like I can't even tell you. And this one night I was just fed up, man. We all have that moment.
Yeah.
And I push her to the ground and I say, if you ever touch me again, I'll kill you. And that night I told her, you're out of my life. You're not my mother. I'm done with you. And guy, until the day she died, I saw her one time.
Mm.
And it was simultaneously the most difficult decision, but the most important decision I've ever made. I would not be here with you right now doing what I do had I not made that choice. There's not a day that goes by I don't think about it, whether I'm coaching people or speaking on stages or having these kind of conversations. Well, what happens is now that she's back home and I'm going through all this and it's chaotic and now she's got kicked out, my grandma says leave and all the things, again, on the report card, you can go and see it, straight F's. And I don't graduate high school and I have to go to summer school and I'm the embarrassment of everyone. And I'm ostracized from my friends. I get uninvited to all the parties. I go back to doing drugs because I feel so pushed against the wall and lonely. And I'm working this warehouse job while going to summer school. And I'm literally just putting microchips in motherboards 12 hours a day, man. It's the worst job I've ever had in my life because I was just looking at the desperation in people's eyes. Like, this is where dreams went to die. And so I'm sitting here looking at all these people and I'm like, what am I doing, man? The night before I get fired from this job, probably because I'm stoned, I go to the summer school night class and the teacher comes up to me. He goes, we're done with you. We're giving you the diploma. Get out. And so here I am. I have this unearned diploma. I'm not educated. I'm not studious in any capacity. I can't get into the military, which was my goal because I had hurt my knee. And I don't know what to do. And I'm sitting in my car after getting fired from this job. And I'm questioning life, God, the universe, everything, man. I'm so mad, guy. I'm so pissed off because I'm like, why? Why is this happening? Why all this suffering, this pain, this abuse, this trauma? Why do I have these alcoholic, drug addict parents and a family who half of it's in prison and dealing with racism and all of this stuff, man? And I was like, oh my God, I got the solution. I figured it out. It's money. That's the problem. And I made a declaration to myself sitting in that car. I was like, by the time I'm 21, I'm going to make $100,000 legally. And the legal part was important because I got family in prison for life. I've been in handcuffs more times than I can count. And my 3 childhood best friends have been murdered. I knew what was going to happen if I didn't change. So I just started learning skills. I started getting into whatever I could get into to educate myself, but I didn't have clarity about anything other than money.
Why money?
Because, dude, like, think about this. Our electricity is getting turned off. We're getting evicted. Cars are getting repoed. Collectors are calling us. I remember getting hurt, and my mom would be like, "We can't take you to the doctor because we can't afford it." And
Right.
so the thing that made sense to my logical 18-year-old brain, as logical as an 18-year-old brain can be, I was like, "Oh, it's money. It's got to be." And so I just started working my face off, getting skills. And when I was heading into 21, I landed a job with a Fortune 10 company, no high school diploma, no college education. And that year, I came close to my goal, made $96,800.
Wow.
And what that proved to me is that I could do anything if I had clarity. But what I didn't understand was when you are unhealed, when you haven't done any work, when you are trying to substitute love, hope, companionship, grace as everything external, you'll do whatever it takes externally to fill yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
And so fast forward 5 years, I'm 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs a day, drinking myself to sleep. I'm high from the moment I wake up till the moment I go to bed, cheating on my girlfriend. My little brother calls me, goes, "Never talk to me again. You're not my brother." My friends can't stand me. And I'm 50 grand in debt.
Oh boy.
And I had this moment where I'm just looking at my life. I'm about to turn 26. I'm laying in bed. Again, keep in mind, man, I'm 350 pounds. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm smoking a joint, eating chocolate cake, and watching the CrossFit games. Ultimate rock bottom. But it was the 1,000th rock bottom. I already fallen so many times. But for whatever reason, this particular day, guy, honestly, man, it was like, this was this was the life or death moment. Like, really, it truly was. And I pulled myself up off the bed, and I walked into the bathroom. And dude, to this day, I have no idea why I did this. Just felt like the thing I had to do. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I did not recognize my face. I had no idea who this person was I was looking at. And I remembered in that moment being 8 years old, and the water company had come and turned our water off. It's blistering hot Indiana summer day. But man, they were always turning off our water, our heat, our electricity. We were always getting evicted. This was just another Tuesday. And for whatever reason, man, I go in the backyard. I grab this little blue bucket. I walk across the street to our neighbor's house. And for the first time, I stole water. And I remember being like, man, when I'm a grown up, this is not going to be my life. And as I'm looking in the mirror, having this memory, it's visible. Dude, I literally feel the moment of it.
Mm-hmm.
I realized the truth. I wasn't keeping the promise that I made to myself. And as I looked in that mirror, I asked myself a question. I said, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? The answer, dude, it could have God, spirit, universe, Mother Nature, Batman, bro. I have no idea where this came from. The answer was no excuses, just results. And what that meant is I had to stop making excuses. I had to stop letting all of the pain and suffering be my guide. I had to stop being a victim to myself, letting myself down, letting myself off the hook, being what everyone always said I was going to be. And I had to start showing up for my life. And I meant it
Mm-hmm.
literally. And it was therapy, group therapy, men's group therapy, trauma informed therapy, Gestalt, EMDR, CBT, NLP, tons of courses, unbelievable number of books read, going to conferences, being in rooms with PhDs who are getting secondary education and being a civilian, paying my way through. Dude, to date, I've spent over $265,000 and over 6,500 hours on my own healing journey and personal development. Because I knew if I wasn't willing to bet on myself, nobody was going to. And today, what's really incredible, and I never would imagine this would be my life. This was not the plan, bro. I promise you. This, like, if all the shit I was like, I'm gonna do, it was never this, right? And today, you know, we've got one of the bigger podcasts in the world. We've coached thousands of people. We've written a best-selling book. It's incredible what we get to do to help other survivors transform their trauma into triumph.
Oh my God. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy that you're standing here, you're sitting here, you're doing this. How hard is it to, I mean, you talked about that moment where you're like, no excuses, but just results. What what was the first thing you did?
That's such a good question, man. I just thought about this. I thought about this a lot in that moment because that day was hard, man. Like honestly, that was probably the hardest day of my life. I've been through some shit, but that day was the day that I realized two things. One, that stuff wasn't my fault. That's a really hard truth for survivors to come to.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, even more difficult, that everything from that moment forward was on me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought about it, man, because I think inherently we kind of all know the thing we're supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? We stuff it down, we run from it, we hide from it. And it was really like in that moment, I was like, the very first thing I do is next time I go to therapy, I need to be honest. I'd paid this guy, I don't know, 20 grand over 2 years and just sat in his office and lied to him the whole time. Survival mechanism, man. We learn to lie, keeps us safe. Talk to me about the bruise, the cut, the scar, the dirty clothes, the homework you don't do. Oh, I don't know. Dog
Mm-hmm.
ate it. Fell down the stairs. Baseball game. Not my stepdad just beat the shit out of me at 3 o'clock in the morning drunk. And so I knew honesty, as as difficult as it was, like insurmountably, it was like climbing Mount Everest to sit across from someone and go, this happened to me. But I knew that I had to because I kept the secret at that point for 26 years.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knew about the abuse. Nobody knew that I was molested. Nobody knew I was homeless. Nobody knew I used to steal food. Nobody knew my best friends were murdered. Nobody
So
knew
your classmates didn't know any of this?
nobody had a clue, man.
Wow.
Nobody. Dude, my girlfriend at the time, we'd been together for 6 years, never shared any of it. Never told her one. I mean, you'd have to be a complete blind person not to realize something happened, but we never,
Right.
she would be like, why won't you talk to me? And I'd be like, I am talking to you, just not even sharing truth. And
Right.
so I made that I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to sit in this office. And one of the things I discovered, like in that therapy session, I was like, okay, wait a second. I think this is the wrong vehicle. I need a different therapist, somebody who really understands childhood trauma. And then it was a deep dive. I learned Filetti's work in the ACE survey, and then I fell into Vessel van der Kolk and Pete Walker and Gabor Mate, and then I met Caroline Leaf, and then it was personal development with Tom Bilyeu and John Lee Dumas and Tim Story and Anna Lamke. And I mean, dude, it was just like this crazy spiral that happened. But it all started with choosing honesty in the spite of fear.
So when did you get to the point where you're like, okay, I want to help other people. I want to create this business. How did that unfold? When did that
So
unfold?
yeah, so I that wasn't the intention, man. I never thought this would be the thing. What happened was, so I've always considered myself a writer first. Even as a kid, I wrote my first screenplay when I was like 9 years old.
Uh-huh.
It was a vampire romantic comedy. But because we grew up Mormon, my mom was like, absolutely not. She shredded it right in front of me, right? And so I was just like, nope, I'm a writer. I'm gonna write. And I'm not an amazing writer, but I'm gonna write. And so I just started writing blogs under a totally different thing. It was anonymous, really. And then I shared publicly for the first time, December 31st, 7 years ago. I shared publicly a diatribe, right? But I'd been doing so much healing work. It wasn't a call for help. It was I just need to put this out so I can get it the fuck off my chest.
Right.
I'm carrying this weight. God, oh my God, just let go. And I shared that. And it was, dude, I was terrified. because I was like, oh my God, people are going to see me for the first time. And what happened was, because I had been in therapy, in group, and all the things, but people started reaching out to me and they're like, dude, I had no idea. Or they were like, my dad did that. My mother did that. I had this experience. Thank you for helping me be seen. And look, guy, this is before the conversation around trauma today is very different than 7 years ago.
Right.
Nobody was talking about this. And it slowly started to transpire into this thing that it's now become, because people asked me to help. All I was doing, literally at the frame of it all, was I was sharing what I was learning, hoping that my little brothers would read it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it, man. The rest of it has just been what it is, because I realized one of the things that in my own personal life has held really true, that I need guidance, I need mentorship, I need coaching. And so I reach out to the people who are one step in front of me, and then the people who are one step behind me, I put my hand out, and we are this chain of growth and healing together. And so now, 7 years removed from that moment, it's a very, very different experience, but not one that I ever really put a lot of thought behind until probably about 5 years ago, when I was like, okay, wait a second, we can do something in the guise of a Brandon Burchard or Tony Robbins, or you name them, because people need help and support. And I've been able to crawl through an ACE score of 10 and the craziest shit you can imagine. And to your point, and I love that you read that passage, like, I'm as whole as I think I can be.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I love my life. I am so happy and fulfilled and proud to be able to be of service to people. And that has only come through doing my own work and realizing, I think one of the truths that people fail to understand, due to, I'm going to call it the indoctrination of abuse that we go through, is that we perceive the world as this massively terrible, frightening, bad place. People are evil. They're only going to hurt you. And dude, the more work that I've done and the more connection I've had and meeting amazing humans like you, I've realized it's just not true. And so if I can be that guiding post for people, then it makes all that fucking suffering worth it, man.
Mm-hmm. When you started off on your quote unquote healing journey, when you were like, okay, I need to do something, um, was can you share with us, was there a particular therapist who did or said something that opened things up for you, that shifted things for you?
Yeah, for sure. Well, there was a lot, man, because you have to. So I put together the numbers one time based off my credit card receipt. So I went and I tracked this back, and I looked at it. I was going to therapy 3 times a week at one point, right? And it was CBT, EMDR, and then men's group. And then I would switch it out at an EMDR, and then I went into Gestalt. And Gestalt was the most powerful for me, because I am very much a causation and correlation analytical person. I think most people are. And so I was like, oh, when I'm in here, I get to create rhyme and reason.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a therapist that I worked with who he told me one of the most singular, most important things anyone's ever told me. So I'm sitting in his office, and this is probably 5 years ago, might be edging towards 6. Time, it seems to crunch itself. So we're somewhere in that 5-6 window. And I'm in Portland, Oregon at this point. I knew that I had to leave Indiana. I try to tell my clients this. I'm like, you might want to really consider leaving the place where every time you drive down the street, you get triggered. Right. And so I leave Indiana. I'm in Portland, Oregon, as far away from that as I can imagine being. And it's this rainy spring afternoon. It's a Wednesday, 5:15, same time every Wednesday for years. And I look at him, guy, and I go, I fucking hate talking to you, man. I can't stand being in this room. I fucking hate that I have to come in here, have this conversation, and deal with shit that isn't mine. And he looks at me and he just goes, I get it. I get it. And that was important to me, that moment, because he wasn't trying to soothe me. He wasn't trying to
Mm-hmm.
solve the fucking problem. He goes, I get it. And I go, man, I feel depressed. I feel anxious. I feel like I hate everything all the time, but I'm trying to do this and heal, and whatever it becomes, it will become. And he says, can I share something with you? I go, yeah, duh. I literally go, yeah, duh. That's why I'm here being fucking ornery because I was shitty. I didn't want to be there. I mean, and he goes, you know that you can be depressed and still tend to your garden, right? And I was like, no, actually, I didn't know you could do that. He goes, you can be depressed and you can make love to your partner. You can be depressed and run your business. You can be depressed and go to dinner with your friends. You can be depressed and still live. And Guy, what I realized in that moment, which literally, like, I feel the emotion rising from this, is I could still have had all that trauma and be a person who loves themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably one of the most pivotal moments of my entire life, just because no one had ever conveyed something like that to me.
Mm-hmm.
It showed me possibility. That's all it was, man. There was no roadmap. There was no game plan. He didn't give me any exercises, nothing. He dropped and planted this small little seed. And I was like, you're right. I can look at this finger every day that was cut off and understand the truth of it, but not let it ruin me.
What is your purpose now with Think Unbroken? Who do you help? Who do you talk to? Who comes to you?
Yeah. Here's what's interesting. So my background is actually digital advertising and marketing. And so I had this idea of like who my person would be when I actually created something that I thought was beneficial, that could be an offer. And I was like, oh, I know exactly who this person is going to be. And then what happened, guys, I realized that I was dead wrong. Probably the most wrong I've ever been in business, ever. And I've had some success. And I was wrong because it started to be like, it's this 21-year-old kid in college and this 34-year-old dad who's in construction and this 64-year-old woman who drives trucks and this 52-year-old man who is changing his life for the first time after only ever doing what he's been told to do. And it hit me. Like, I really sat and I went back through the ACE survey research. And I would say two things about that. One, I think it's inaccurate. It's accurate as it can be because it's research, but it's inaccurate because A, the sample size, and B, where they did the research, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at it, it says, well, if you have one answer to this ACE, chances are you have two, and 83% of people have probably had two or more adverse childhood experiences. But I'm like, wait a second. Once you go survey the hood, where I come from, where if you tell on people, you're going to get fucked up, where we grow up in communities where reports don't happen, where these things don't exist. And I would argue, man, honestly, it's probably like 95% of people have had an adverse childhood experience,
Right.
which is devastating, right? But it's true because sometimes it's divorce, sometimes it's this or that, right? If you don't know the ACE survey, I highly recommend you spend some time, go and research it, because that data helped me tremendously in my own journey. And so I'm looking at that as I'm like being like, why am I not getting these people who I thought were the people?
Mm-hmm.
And then I discovered everybody needs help. Everybody needs support. Everyone needs to know that they can be depressed and tend to their garden, man. And ultimately the mission is very simple. I've thought about this a lot, because it's the only way I think that I can make meaning. Because the service of the brain is survival and meaning making. And I'm always seeking meaning making. And I was like, okay, how do I make meaning of the chaos that was the first 25 years of my life? And it hit me one day. I was like, oh, I got it. End generational trauma in your lifetime through education and information, so another kid doesn't have to have a story like yours. And that became the guiding light. So that's what we do. And that's why we release a podcast every day. And my books are free. And 99.9% of our content is free. And we are working diligently every day just to support people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredible. The messages I get every day, 5, 6, 7, 10 times a day, people are like, thank you, or you changed my life, or you're saving me. And I'm like, first off, I'm not saving you. You're saving yourself. Let's be very clear. I've saved one person in my life. That person is me, motherfucker. So congratulations for doing the work. But we put that stuff out there because I believe in it. And I know and I believe in my heart, like more than anything I've ever believed, that when we can create a space, I'm not even talking about a safe space necessarily, because I think sometimes it's necessary to be out of that and into something that challenges you really hard. And I think safe spaces are maybe a little too safe right now, but you have to be, but what we've done and what we've cultivated is something that people can step into, knowing first and foremost and most importantly that they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, man. I felt so fucking alone. And I was alone as a dude. I had no friends as a kid. None. Zero. I had like one friend all of elementary, middle school, high school. Even though I was like this popular jock kid, like none of these kids fucking liked me. Right. I just happened to be popular because I was a good athlete and I dated a cheerleader at one point. Right. And then in my 20s, I realized like all my friends then, we built our relationships around parties and drugs. And then when I started this healing journey, guy, they all disappeared, all of them. And so I was like, wait a second, I always felt ostracized and alone. What if we just let people know that's not true? And that there's so much more to it. I mean, there's so many elements and aspects, but ultimately it's very simple, man. It's like show people the truth. And the truth is, and I know this sounds crazy, but we live in the matrix, man. Now, literally, I mean, you wouldn't know because it's the matrix, but like when you understand that you have the ability to bend reality to create the life that you want, when you are willing to walk down the path, it's incredible what happens. Dude, my favorite thing ever is when a client emails me or calls me or texts me and like, hey man, I don't need to do this anymore. I'm like, fuck yeah, that's the whole point. I don't want to coach you. I don't even want to be here. So let's do what it takes. And that's
Right.
what it's about. It's a community that is about doing what it takes and showing up and being willing to face the dragons in front of us to be the change.
So you have a book that's called Think Unbroken, and people can get that on Amazon and your website. And
And the
what else?
library.
Okay, important. And how else do people interact with you? They work with you. We have courses or what events?
Yeah, we have courses, we have events. Depending on when this comes out, the event may or may not happen. We do this thing called Unbroken Conference. And so that's a big virtual conference. We're working now that I feel like we're actually through freaking COVID, we'll be back to doing in-person stuff. So really the beginning of this, we did events in like 15 countries
Wow.
before COVID, and then all that ended like everyone's, and I've been slowly ramping it back up.
And what's the purpose there on those in those events? What do you want people walking away from
I
with?
want them to walk away with education, right? With education and hope, right? I think hope is that thing that's kind of driven me. I'll even dare substitute the word stubborn with hope because I'm super stubborn. And I'm like, when I decide something, like it's done. You ask anybody who knows me, guy, I'm like, if I say it, it's fucking done. And so I'm like, how do I give that to them? How do I show them through these tools, through the assessments, through the education, through the guest speakers, through the group exercises and breakouts, through the community, through the integration, through all of the things that those are, that it can be different. But I don't
Their
like,
lives can be different.
yes, but
Yeah.
I don't, and I use different, not better. Because I think better is a really weird word. Because like if I laid out better on the table, I can't measure it, but I can measure different, right? Did I smoke
Mhm.
today? No. Did I drink today? No. Did I beat my kids today? No. Okay, different, right? And so when I'm trying to create that understanding for them, it's giving them permission to create the life for them. I'm not implanting or embedding ideas about who they should be. I'm just laying out the things that I've done and that I've seen others do in the hopes that it will trigger for them a moment of meaning making that in which they will give themselves permission to do the difficult task ahead, and that is the thing that they know they need to do to make their life better, to step into that thing that's a scary concept of no excuses, just results.
Mhm.
And look, here's the wild thing, guy, and I know you'll agree with this. Excuses are valid. They are. I will never, ever, 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 ever take that away from anyone. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, are the excuses that you're using worth the pain that you're in because you are not choosing to tolerate something differently in your life? And that's a wake-up call. And that's what people need in a supportive way, not in a baseball bat to the face kind of way, because that's probably not the most beneficial. But if I can sit across from someone, or they can be in connection with someone, and I can ask them a hard question, Guy, be very clear about this. I'm going to ask you questions that you are terrified to answer, because within that answer is the truth of who you are.
Mm.
And when we do that, and you challenge the narrative of the person that you believe that you have been because of what's been ingrained, embedded, enmeshed, and indoctrinated into you, this thing called freedom happens, in which you can start to be a critical thinker in alignment with who it is that you choose to be, and start walking a new path.
I love that. When is this event? When's the next event?
The next one, so we are moving to doing them monthly, so I will say that.
Oh,
But
wow.
Unbroken Con, our biggest event of the year, is December 13th, 2022.
Is that going to be virtual?
It is virtual.
Okay.
But we are working on multiple in-person events for 2023.
Awesome.
Thank God. Dude, I've missed it so much. It's just different, man.
Yeah, of course.
It's different to hold somebody in a moment where they need you.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, to say that you're inspiring is an understatement. But you're incredible. And
Thanks,
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you came on this podcast. It's an honor to speak with you, and I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, anytime. It's an honor, man. And thank you, because, conversations and moments like this make you a part of my mission. And I'm eternally grateful for you, brother. Thank you.
I appreciate that. All right, we'll be in touch.